What's up, guys? I'm Matthew Belcher with Appalachian Performance Engineering. We're here today to talk about our MV vehicle that we've built for government service use and military and patrol and police forces. We talked to a lot of different operators, also Border Patrol, some police force agencies, and tried to get an idea when we were building this thing on how it needs to be built, where it can be utilized across all boards. We started with a basic layout of the vehicle, and there's so many different variables when you're coming to designing and building a vehicle from scratch, whether it's independent suspension, trailing arm setup, 4-link, solid axle, diesel drivetrain, gasoline. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So we talked to a lot of different people, basically give you guys an idea of why we did what we did and how we built the vehicle that we think it'll best outfit you guys and work functionally across all boards. We've built a basic platform that can be outfitted, whether it's going to a fire rescue team, a border patrol team, a SF unit. We built the vehicle for internal air transport in the CH-47-53 helicopters, the C-130, the C-5, the C-17, and the A-400 fixed-wing aircrafts. We've started with a diesel drivetrain. We have a diesel motor in this thing because most military forces utilize diesel. However, we can swap to a gasoline motor if Border Patrol or fire rescue or somebody like that would want to do that type of thing. We've got an automatic transmission in here, and that would be the same for the gasoline motor. We've got a selectable transfer case, and then from there we go down to the axles and suspension system. We voted to go with a 4-link double triangulated suspension, both front and rear, and the reason is because of ease when it comes to swapping out parts, maintenance, and also the capabilities of it. We debated on going with a trailing arm setup in the rear, which would give you a little bit more travel. However, most drivers or operators or Border Patrol guys, when they get in that vehicle, they're not going to be comfortable operating that vehicle because they've never driven something like that. So we went with a 4-link front, 4-link rear, and we went with a solid axle front and a solid axle rear. The reason we didn't go independent front suspension on the front is just because of the complications of it. I mean, you can have heavy-duty A-arms in the lower, you can have heavy-duty A-arms in the upper, and then you've got the struts and you've got the axle shafts and you've got all the little components that come with it, and whether if it's built all beefy, you're good, but if you don't have a guy that knows how to tune and adjust that suspension system, it's not going to work properly. So we went with a solid axle in the front. It gives it easy ram push-through style of driving. You're not going to have any problems with it, and in the event that you do break something, it's easy to swap. You've got 4 bolts on the 4-link, you've got 2 bolts on the shocks, 1 brake, and your whole axle's front. It's loose. So I mean, we can sell whole axle assemblies and get them to you guys to minimize downtime, to keep you guys running and keep you operating in the field. We also went with a solid axle in the rear, which is identical. They're both Chevy 14 bolts, front and rear, so parts are interchangeable. Most part house in the US carry standard GM automotive parts that will fit these front and rear axles. So when looking at this front axle assembly here, we've got a standard Chevy 14 bolt center section. We've re-sleeved the axle tubes here with 1/2-inch thick DOM steel tubing, and then we've put forged crane axle inner Cs and forged crane axle outer knuckles. And from that point on, you have all Chevy components, which are all and found in common parts houses across the US, and you should be able to get across the world. This style axle is built for an abusive style of driving, where you can hit the rocks, you can hit the trees, you can hit the hills, and not have to worry about this axle assembly because it's built for abuse. Like I said earlier, if you don't have an axle in the four-wheel drive industry, you don't have a rig, because if you break an axle, you're down. This axle is built for abuse, and it can withstand it. We've got 3/8 thick forged cast diff cover here, and then we've also got our ram that, if you look at it, it's designed to take the lip and push you up the hill, so it can take the abuse. You got a full hydraulic ram mounted here. We used full hydraulic steering on this thing because it's easy, it's simple, and it's pretty stout stuff. I mean, you can turn these tires no matter what type of environment you're in, no matter what type of pinch the tire's in, the ram will still turn the tires, and that's what you want in an off-road capable vehicle. So looking at this rear axle assembly here, it is also a Chevy 14 bolt, like I said. If you're looking at center sections, it's one of the stoutest axles you can get unless you're stepping up to a Rockwell military style axle, which you don't want to put in this type of vehicle. We also put bump stops on here, which are these girls right here, on both the front and the rear. And the reason we did that is not for off-roading this vehicle, but more towards airdrop capabilities. We know that you guys might be throwing these things out of planes, dropping them from helicopters, sling loading them, and we're just trying to minimize downtime on the ground when you guys have all the cardboard and unpacking that you have to do. These bump stops are basically here to protect the shocks. So the bump stops will bottom out prior to the shock bottoming out, so that you don't blow a shock out when you're dropping this thing out of an airplane. We also put limiting straps so that when this thing is sling loaded, your shock doesn't overextend itself. So you have shock protection, whether it's fully compressed or fully extended. You've got basically two protection items there. So we put Radflow coilovers on this thing, front and rear, and the reason we did that is because they're easily tunable, they're easily adjustable, whether we put a lot of weight on here or we lighten the load depending on where it's going to, we can adjust those shocks to make it work for the commander agency. So when talking about the inside of this vehicle here, we added an adjustable steering wheel. We know all operators aren't same size. Seat is also adjustable depending on how big you are. There is no one size fits all, so we wanted to make it adjustable for operators no matter who might be driving it. We also put a high output charging system in this thing. So we have an inverter in here. We've got power supply outlets, plenty of power to any radios, any computers, any type of thing that you guys will need while on a mission, depending on who you are. I mean, no matter what, you always need power supply. So we've got an inverter in here, 4 outlets up here, and we can convert them to USB or radio supply ports or wherever might be needed. We also have 2 outlets in the rear on both sides next to both seats. So plenty of power supply, standard drive control, standard steering wheel control, and this is your transfer case control. We also have an option for not levers like this, so we can put an easier, smaller push button style shifting capabilities for the transfer case, whether you want 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, 4 high, 4 low, etc. We've got light bars on the front, light bars on the rear, plenty of visibility front and rear. There's nothing worse than coming up on a mission and you can't see what you're doing. So we tried to provide you guys with plenty of light. So one of the things we took into consideration, we were designing and building this thing and talking to different operators and whatnot, is room for comfort. You don't want to be on an 8-hour patrol and not be comfortable and able to operate. So when we came to designing this thing, for reference, I'm 6 foot tall, around 200 pounds. Me getting in and out of this buggy with an M4, there's plenty of room in front of my feet. And this is with the front seat all the way back. There's plenty of room for my M4. Of course, I don't have on bulletproof armor and gear and all that. However, compared to other vehicles that I've been in, there's a lot of room in here. So when we were designing and building this thing, we made sure to check the boxes that it is internal air transportable, but at the same time, our operators will feel safe, they'll feel comfortable, and they'll have plenty of room to operate and not have to worry about being crunched up and unable to operate. We outfit the vehicle, we built it to spec for the military litter to slide in and out of the rear with ease. It slides directly in the rear, in between the 2 rear seats, forward to back. There's plenty of room in there, and we can also put track systems depending if it's a medical evacuation team or a fire rescue team. So ultimately, we built a capable, reliable, comfortable, high-performance UTV that can be outfitted for SF teams, Border Patrol, fire rescue, whoever it might be. They're available for purchase on GSA, or you can contact us directly.